next introducer is Karen Bracken, and she is from Tennessee, and she is a property rights champion extraordinaire.
Thank you very much. Good morning. Our next speaker is a junior senator from Kentucky who was elected in the year 2010. He has been described as a Tea Party senator, a constitutional conservative, and a libertarian. He has also been a major advocate for liberty in the U.S. Senate. It is my privilege and my honor to introduce Senator Rand Paul.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, you caught me on casual Friday without my tie. I'm actually heading to the airport and going home, and if I weren't allowed to go home, I don't think I could do this job. So I get to go home most every weekend. I've got 3 boys and a wife at home. I have a 13-year-old, a 16-year-old, and a 19-year-old. And for any of you who have ever had children go off to college, mine went off to college this year, you kind of worry about, will they succeed? Will they show up for their 8 o'clock class? Will they stay out of trouble? So my wife and I were looking for advice on this, and we found out that someone had already devised a test to find out whether your child will succeed. And the test was that the mother and the father hid in the closet, and they put out a $100 bill, the Bible, and a bottle of bourbon. And they figured if they picked up the money, if the son picked up the money, he'd be a businessman maybe. If he picked up the Bible, maybe a clergyman. Or if he picked up the bourbon, I guess he was going to join the fraternity. So the mother and father hid in the closet, and the son came in. He picked up the $100 bill and held it up to the light, stuck it in his pocket. He picked up the Bible, he flipped through it, and said, stuck it under his arm. He picked up the bourbon, uncorked it, and took a swig and stuck it under his other arm and marched off to his room. And the mother said, it's worse than we thought. He's going to be a politician. We've got a lot of problems as a country, and everybody's always telling us, just compromise. If you'll just compromise, it'll be fine. But I'm going to announce there has been a compromise. We have decided, at least in principle, I don't know if we figured out how to do this, but we've decided in principle that we are no longer going to send checks to dead people. Now, before you clap, I'm not sure we've decided how to stop it. And then you ask yourself, well, certainly it can't be a big problem. Over $600 million have been sent to dead people in the last 5 years. $600 million. These are like Social Security checks going to people who are dead. One guy got his dad's check from 1971 to 2008. You know how they caught him? He died. You don't want your government in charge of much. When Thomas Paine said that government's a necessary evil, he meant it. That's why we minimize. It doesn't mean that we don't have government. We need a national defense. We need a judiciary. We sort of need a legislature despite how bad they're performing. There are certain things we need from government, but we want to minimize what else government does. If there's ever a choice, the private sector should do it. And there's one, because you give up freedom, you give up taxes, you give up your labor. When you create governments, you want to minimize how much of your labor, how much of your freedom you give up. But there's also simply an efficiency argument for this as well. Milton Friedman wrote that nobody spends someone else's money as wisely or as frugally as you spend your own. It's just a simple truism. You spend your money more carefully. If I borrow $10,000 to start a business or to do something, or $100,000, I feel it right in here that I got to pay that back, and I make all my decisions, and I labor over all my decisions. But if I take 10 trillion of your dollars and spend it, I just don't have that same feeling inside. I mean, we try, but you can't ever care about it. That's why you don't want money given to your government, because they don't make wise decisions. They also don't have the same signals. We don't get a signal. We don't get a profit and loss statement every week. We don't have to meet a payroll. We just print more money. Now, what I will tell you, and for the new members, is don't succumb to Washington logic. Washington logic is awful, and if you stay up here too much, some people are always whining and saying, oh, we need to be more collegial and we need to spend our weekends up here. it'd be a disaster. Go home and talk to people in your grocery store. Go home and talk to people at your church. But don't stay up here all the time. Up here, the logic is completely topsy-turvy. This fiscal cliff thing they're talking about, for 10 years we've had tax rates. They call them the Bush tax cuts. They're just the tax code. It's been the tax code for 10 years. If it expires, your taxes are going to go up $2 trillion, I think, over 10 years. 4 trillion, a bunch. I'll say a big number. It's going up a big number over 4 years. We have people on our side, this is where the danger is as much as on the Democrat side, on our side saying, well, anything less than that is a tax cut. Because the policy is if we do nothing, taxes are going to go up, let's say $2 trillion. So if we have a tax increase, if President Obama comes forward and says, we'll just tax the rich people $1 trillion, that's a tax cut of $1 trillion. So you get this topsy-turvy logic that anything less than the whole $2 trillion going up is a tax cut. That's ridiculous. Nobody at home believes that. And you have to stay steadfast on this whole idea. It doesn't matter whether it's rich people, middle class, or poor people. It's the private sector and the public sector. It's the efficient sector that creates jobs and the public sector that saps the creation of jobs, saps the wealth of the country, and most of the stuff they spend it on injures more business and makes it harder for business to create jobs. That's what it is. It's not about rich people or poor people. But we have to stay steadfast in this because let's say it's $2 trillion if all the tax rates go up, and let's say they only tax the rich people and it goes up $1 trillion. That's $1 trillion taken out of the private sector, the efficient sector that creates jobs, and given to the inefficient sector. So we shouldn't give in on this. And people say, well, you have to compromise. You don't have to compromise the way they define the compromise. You can find an agreement. I'm not against compromising. Like, I think to fix Social Security, the age has to go to 70 over the next 20 years. But I'd take 69 over 25 years. That's compromise. But I won't take that we do nothing. On the tax front, though, I don't think we need to raise taxes. Spending's gone from 20% of GDP to 25% of GDP in the last 4 years. Spending's increased dramatically. Now, tax revenue is down because we're not growing, because the economy slowed down. If you look at after the Bush tax cuts from 2003 to 2007, tax rates as a revenue as a percentage of GDP stays stable, doesn't go down. It goes down in 2007, 2008. We didn't do anything to the rates. Revenue went down because we went into a recession. If government wants more revenue, figure out how to get the economy to grow again. You can have the same tax rates for the rest of eternity and still get more revenue every year if the economy grows. But your economy is not going to grow if you raise rates. In fact, sometimes when you raise rates, you get less revenue. And sometimes you lower rates and you get more revenue. But the bottom line is it's a mistake to raise taxes on anybody. We shouldn't give in on it. Those who are new here, please hold the line. Listen to the people from the community, but don't get caught up in the Potomac fever. Don't get caught up in the dialogue that becomes so confusing that raising taxes is really lowering taxes. That's the real problem up here, and it goes around. Even some people, many of you in this audience would consider good conservatives, I've had discussions with this week, and they're saying, oh, really, anything less than all the taxing going up is really going to be a tax cut, and we should deal with it. Now, there is one compromise I would be in favor of, and that's that all spending should be cut. The reason why it's a compromise, though, is that I believe national defense is the most important thing we do up here. It is a constitutional function of government. We should do it. But my compromise is that I'm willing to look at military spending and understand that not all of it's going towards national defense. Tom Coburn came out with a report either today or yesterday, and he found $7 billion per year. I think it was a total of 60 some odd billion dollars in the Defense Department that's non-military, completely non-military, and has nothing to do with the military. The reason they do it is most conservatives are for national defense. A lot of Democrats are too, and so the budget for the Defense Department always passes easily, so they stick stuff in there that they knew may not pass on its own. But I think the compromise is conservatives. We're all conservatives who believe in a strong national defense. We compromise enough to say, let's look for some waste in the military budget. The liberals, though, have to compromise and say entitlements have to be fixed. You know, we have to look at domestic welfare. If both sides do, we slow down spending, but we try to get economic growth, and government revenues will grow if the economy grows. But the economy's not growing now, and raising taxes is going to make it worse. Congratulations to those who won recently, and if I haven't met you, please come up, and we'd like to meet you. We want more interaction between the House and the Senate. We tried it a couple times last year, and we're going to continue trying. We did it on one episode where we really had an influence. Cut, Cap, and Balance was a movement, and I was part of the people trying to get it started because I wanted to say to those who are always saying compromise, I will raise the debt ceiling on one condition. You pass a balanced budget amendment to the Constitution. Now, some conservatives wouldn't even accept that, but I went ahead and said, let's throw that out there to say, well, we will, in the interim, raise the debt ceiling, because you probably have to, but only if you have permanent and real reform, not some caps that you will exceed. And we did it, and it worked well. Senate and House got together. Leadership in the Republican Party did not want it in the Senate or the House, but enough of us got together that the grassroots folks, and then the grassroots congressmen, because they're kind of like the grassroots also, because they don't have much say in the leadership. But if all of us get together, we can have some influence, and we got them to vote on that, and the House passed it. We got a vote in the Senate, we lost. We kind of expected to, but at least then we were for something. We were for the balanced budget amendment. I think you have to have something like that ultimately, and we have to keep promoting it. It's been forever. We've been trying, but I say keep promoting that. So don't give up. The country's too great to give up on. I know you've done a lot to get up here, and you've done a lot to support all these candidates. Keep fighting, and we'll keep fighting for you. Thank you very much.